This forward, upward motion with drops in one ocean. Roll on.
Will you rise up with me today? Lift up your voice and boldly say, we are the ones we've been waiting for.
If the dream of your highest calling be the hope of a new day dawning, we're the ones who can make a difference. Let's stand together. Share your gifts with a world that's waiting for a change that we're all creating. It's a moment for our greatness. Let's stand together now.
Hello and welcome to AGNT Speaks. We gather each week in consciousness to have conversations about the world within us and the world around us. So it is my honor to host these conversations with your AGNT leadership team. We are the Association for Global New Thought, and we are here as a collective consciousness of spiritual leaders supporting you, supporting ministries, supporting ministers, supporting individuals in bringing together a world that works for all through our practicing of truth teachings. So we join together to have this conversation each week. Sometimes we have friends on that are friends of AGNT. And I want to take a moment just to open up today, before we go any further, just open up today with a moment of peace, a moment of silence, a moment of blessing for all of the beloveds in Ukraine, and for all of our beloveds standing for peace. So those risking their lives in Russia standing for peace, and those linking hands around the globe standing for peace. So if you would join me in just taking a deep inhale and a deep exhale in this moment, connecting with the heart center, connecting with peace. And now imagine, if you would, extending out your left hand and your right hand, and picture all of those who stand for peace, linking hands, hand to hand, throughout the world. And so it is. Namaste. So today it warms my heart that we have Reverend Kenn Gordon here with us today. Kenn was the spiritual leader for Centers for Spiritual Living based in Golden, Colorado. And so he has done an incredible service for the movement of New Thought and Centers for Spiritual Living in that position serving. He has been a minister for quite some time. He is an author, and he is now retired in Canada. And I just want to welcome you and thank you for being here for this conscious conversation today, Kenn Gordon.
Thank you, Erin. It's great to be here. It's great to see you again. It's so strange in this time that we kind of isolate and get ourselves stuck into our own little grooves. Steve Alpert just sent me a chat message, said, "Ma, you look young. What's your secret?" And the secret is, for the first time in 25 years, I've been at home for 2 years solid. And so it's interesting. Lost some weight, do some gardening, lots of cooking, playing golf. Life is good. Life is good. At least in my little community, it is. It's a remarkable time and space we're in right now, this transitional period that we're going through with all these changes that are coming forward. William Meader from the Theosophical Society years ago said that when the light shines bright, the shadow grows. And I can't help but think that what we're seeing in a lot of situations is the shadow that's showing up, that's kind of hanging in the air and everywhere we go. You know, he also said that there are 3 kinds of people in the world, 3 types. And of course, he was just speaking. But he said, there are those that want it to go back to the old way. There are those that don't think they have any power whatsoever, so they just let it happen. And he said, then there are those who know that they make a difference in the world with their consciousness.
Wow.
And then he said, and we are the people who are in the middle of that with our consciousness. And that's precisely where and how I've been trying to live my life, is to stay on a pathway of joy and brightness and hope and peace, and trusting that everything's unfolding for its highest and greatest good. And when I see things happening where the shadow is so supreme, like most human beings, I have a tendency initially to go to the dark side on it and think how horrible it is, and then find myself through my practices to be pulled back into the realization that everything that is occurring is for the goodness of life itself. And that this is what is obviously required in order for us to knock off some of the rough edges as a collective consciousness of society to be able to move forward. And it doesn't make any of it right. It just simply makes it observable without having to go to the same place that perhaps we're to enjoin ourselves with the same energy that we're opposed to, or that we find ourselves not wanting to be in. And so it's been an interesting couple of years, let's face it. So, and how about you? What are you doing?
Well, holding a lot of prayers and consciousness around, Ukraine. I know so many in our community here are just really, struggling, processing, having tears, having upset, and also trying on the spiritual perspectives, like you said, to look at, what is being birthed here, what is moving, what are the pieces that needed to happen or that are unfolding as far as how people are coming forward, and what is this really doing? Like, what is this? What are we really releasing? And looking at the paradigms that, the human condition is getting the opportunity to take a look at and say, is this paradigm going to stick around, or are these the death screams of this type of consciousness, and are we moving through it? And certainly the challenge with, people wondering and feeling like it's just the end of the world, that idea that we're just faced with one thing after another that is so dark and so difficult. And, looking at how to bring in the principles and how to bring in the practice and start trying on the idea that we're made for times like these. And like you said, we're not powerless. So we look at where we can have an impact, whether it be in action, in consciousness, in prayer, real physical, but really, really working the principles and working the practice here. And, it's a time for observation. It's a time for processing. Yeah,
for sure. And that's the key. The key is not to give up hope and not to slide to one side or the other, but stay in the middle and stay balanced with regard to it. And I repeat, that doesn't mean that there isn't the human emotions that go with it. Good heavens, I can't turn on the news or read a newspaper about what's going on in Ukraine right now without, might do it now, breaking into tears. But they're not tears of fear. I don't know where they come from. My wife says, cry more, pee less. So maybe there's a goodness in it, but it's just stunning when I look at it, because they're not tears of joy either. They're just a feeling of compassion for not only the Ukrainian people, but for all of us. I question how one human being could have the potential to be able to turn the world on its head.
Wow.
And that pretty much is what I'm looking at. And so I go back to, is this the death throes and of that consciousness, of that need to do that? And I think the answer is yes. And now the next question is, and how long do you think it's going to take us to be able to shed that, to be able to move forward? Things happen in peculiar ways. We know that what we put into consciousness, what we think, not only as individuals, but as a collective, we know that it becomes the reality of our experience. And therefore, when we do our prayer work, we open ourselves to have everything dissolved and dissipated that in any way blocks us from being able to be in that balanced zone. And we invite the infinite intelligence of the universe in to be able to cleanse. And the issue is sometimes we move through it really, really quickly. Sometimes there is no hesitation for it. It's an easy thing to go through. And other times it takes time, unless we move to the consciousness of the Christ and move to the consciousness of the great avatars of our world, which is to really invite divine intervention in, which happens instantaneously. And I think we're waiting for the collective consciousness to get to a point where that divine intervention is welcomed, no matter what the outcome looks like. I teach my students, that there's various kinds of consciousness, and that I actually, when I have a problem in my life, or when I see a problem in life, I'll go to a place that tries to work out how to solve it. That I've got all the solutions somehow.
Yes. Yeah.
Tried to put together an oak tree, but couldn't get the molecules to fit. But there's an intelligence in the universe that has the ability to do it in perfection. And my first step is usually trying to figure out how we can fix this, and come up with all these different scenarios on how it can work. And then at some point, it occurs to me that it's not mine to fix. It's outside. It's mine to fix inside. And then I find myself moving to a place of what I call to hell with it consciousness. I'm allowed to say that because that word's in the Bible. But I move to hell with it consciousness. And when I move to hell with it consciousness, I can surrender it. I can turn it over, and I can allow the light to be able to get in. And when I'm trying to strategize in my own mind what the solution is, I am limiting the possibilities and the potential to what I have the capacity to be able to do. And the issue is that I don't have the capacity to be able to change that. But when I fall back into the graceful arms and hands of the divine itself, that intelligence, what happens and what occurs is I realize that power has the power to sustain itself in everything and to do everything that we call as miracles, or that we would prefer to say we're ordinaries. That we find ourselves in a situation where we can turn it over completely and then watch it just unfold in perfection. So that's where I'm at. That's kind of what I'm looking at when I'm not crying and strategizing on what we should do about Ukraine on my own being. I will tell you that the bravery and the courage of humanity is showing up not just in Ukraine, although that's true too, but it's showing up in the world in such a powerful way right now. Yes. It's like I'm mad as hell. I can say that word again. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore from the old movie. It's like, how about I trust so much that I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm just going to allow this to be able to unfold in its perfection. And here's the key. And I want to share this because I don't want people to think that we're doing spiritual end runs on this. From that point, it's required that each of us as individuals do every single thing that's put in front of us that can promote and help that to take place. And if that means speak up, we speak up. If that means be quiet, we be quiet. but we put ourselves in a place where we have a higher and a greater trust in life than we have a trust in the temporal things of our experience. And at that point, this intelligence just picks up and exponentially bloops into something new and forms something new and something great. And what we're seeing is yet again another example where that's required. And yet again,
it is great impact.
Yep, yet again, people will embrace it. And some will, some won't. But, you know, to be able to move to a place where the consciousness of moving forward into the goodness of life is greater than the consciousness of trying to restrict it and hold it back is right around the corner. And, you know, I know there's 7.5 billion or 8 billion people on this planet. The numbers kind of moot. You don't need 50% to do that. You know, if you actually look at it, there is a small group of people who who appear to be living in the past or living in that consciousness. And all it requires is a greater number of people to be in moving in the right direction. And it's just like Meter said, you know, it's like there is a group of people that are stalling, and there's a group of people that are trying to move forward. And then there's the mass in the center, which is going to go the route of less resistance. And the New Thought movement, the religious movement, the true religiosity of the movement is moving forward. And when the numbers get to the place where the realization exists, what'll happen all of a sudden is that movement will go from going in this direction by a few to all of a sudden changing or going in this direction, because the mass in the middle, the bulk in the middle, will change direction instantaneously and follow the majority. And that's where we're at. We're building a world that works for everyone, and we're on the cutting edges. We're on the struggle, and it struggles to be moving in opposition to the way it looks like the world's moving.
Right.
Like trying to walk up a hill as opposed to walk down a hill. And so we're climbing up this hill, and there's, you know, millions of us that are climbing up this hill. And it's up to us to reach out to our friends that are climbing and say, take my hand, I'm strong today. And when we're not strong, reach out and say, give me your hand and help me, because I'm having a struggle getting to where I need to go. And I think that that's what spiritual community does. And things like this that we're doing right now is it just throws the realization that there is a hand there, and that you are not alone. There is a group of people that are moving for the transformation of the world. And it's important we do it together.
Absolutely. If this last just week has showed us anything, it's what you said about the power of action. You know, we're seeing something different than I think we've ever seen before as far as the use of social media, and governments not being able to hide their people from the rest of the world. So it's people to people. And when people to people can connect, they can connect authentically about what they stand for. And the number of people standing for peace, saying, you know, I'm not about this form of interaction, and violence is obsolete. Violence against a human being is obsolete, and it is no longer an option for how we show up to resolve conflict. And people are able to, through social media, hear personal stories, see what's going on firsthand, and connect with each other and let people know what they need. And it's been pretty remarkable to see the different ways that communities and governments and individuals are coming together as far as pooling positive energy and pooling support together. And then, you know, one-on-one in communities, people supporting each other. I've been, you know, working with a number of people, and like you said, you know, that are having a lot of tears, crying often. And I keep encouraging people to be with that energy, let it flow. Don't make it wrong. Deepak Chopra, I think it is, says something about, our emotions. It's like the nervous system of the universe. And so when we process, we're moving energy. When we process, there's something to it. We're all connected. So do that work. Don't take it as just, I'm a blubbering mess in the corner of my house. Take it as a spiritual practice. These tears are coming to me. It is my divine appointment right now to be processing them and to, move this energy, and to use my consciousness, like you said in the beginning, use my consciousness for good. And I love that you really pointed out that it's not enough to pray and stand in this safe space of let me just, take the easy route and say I'm praying, but any action that can come to me, anything I can do in this moment, I need to do. I need to step forward in any way available to me, even if I think I might be irrelevant to solving the issue. I do think that these systems, and I imagine there are a lot of people seeing these same systems operating in their lives. So, just like the moon, when the moon grows and we have a full moon, the tides change, women's bodies change, that what happens at the police department changes, we know that it's all interconnected. And same thing with a paradigm shift. So look at the other ways in your life where you're seeing the same paradigm shift, where you're seeing force and dominion, and when you're seeing, hope and triumph and courage. Look at these systems and work it in your own life. So whatever is coming up for you, start to work it. If there are places where you have division in your life, where you feel the energy of violence, anger, aggression, look at how you want the world to be showing up for those energies. Do it in your own life and do everything that we can in the collective to have an impact. Yep.
And that's what we're doing. We talk about courage and talk about doing things, talk about action. The Ukrainian people definitely are demonstrating it. Our governments are demonstrating it by biting the bullet in certain areas. It'd be nice if they bit the bullet in other areas like petroleum products and things like that. But see, that's me trying to figure out how this works. But you know who really moves me is the Russian people that I believe it's 2,000 of them now that have been that are protesting.
Yeah. And that's not a safe place to protest.
No.
I even just saw an article with an elderly woman on a train or a subway, and she wore yellow and blue as her protest. And it was like protest comes in all forms. And she was dressing up like the Ukrainian flag.
Yeah. And when they're arresting, when they're snatching those protesters off the street in Russia, it's not 40 days in jail. They're risking being able to have a job for the rest of their life, the way it's set up and run. And the bravery is heroic. Yeah. And so I get back to it. How in this time, after the experiences that we've had in the last century and previously to that, but specifically the last century, how they could go back to the old stomping grounds and one person be the cause of this.
Right.
One individual be the one that really motivates and drives it. If you're sitting at home right now and you're thinking, I have no power, let me tell you something. You have the identical amount of power as that one person does. It's just not being played out in as an effective manner to show what's going on with it. And so, we need to empower each other and say, it's important what you do and how you do it. And that's what we're seeing. And that's going to facilitate the speeding up of this change, of this transformation that's taking place in the world around us.
Yeah. Yeah. I have, I mean, we've all, I think, just had our hearts opened by so many of the stories coming out, stories of Ukrainian citizens taking in Russian soldiers, but keeping them safe and letting their families know where they are, and, offering them a home in Ukraine. And, I do the same thing that you said with your strategizing and your mind of problem solving, but it's like anyone that's in reason, you think to yourself, how about anyone that wants to go to Russia then? Anyone that really was a rebel and wants to go to Russia from Ukraine, go on over. And anyone that from Russia that doesn't want to be there anymore, go on over. Just switch your people, leave your borders, leave each other alone, and switch your people. But the world is really stepping forward to say, when we look at history, it's so many times where something happened that no one came in to say, you are mine, I'm here with you. People said, if it's not affecting me, then I'm going to stay out of it. And that's not what we're seeing right now. We're seeing everyone with the stark realization that this type of behavior and domination and control, it doesn't just affect one country or one area, because it's sick. It's a sickness, and it will spread, and it does affect everyone. And we're seeing that. We're seeing people not have to go back, to the history books and look 20 years later to say, oh, we should have realized this. But we're seeing people say it right now to see how this affects all of us. This affects everyone that stands for democracy. This affects everyone that stands for peace. This affects everyone that does not want to use violence against human bodies as a way of making change.
And that's the next evolutionary step, without a doubt. But of course, the world we envision has no borders, because they would not be required or not necessary. And that step that we're talking about would become the first way we operate, as opposed to the last way we operate. We would become proactive in how we do it rather than reactive. And I don't know what's happening down there, but I heard recently that gasoline in Los Angeles was $5.50 a gallon or something, which we've been paying for years, but you guys probably think is outrageous. Yep. And that's the way it's going to have to go. And there's going to be a cost. And so, the tendency to complain about that cost is a vote in the wrong direction. And I'm not saying people shouldn't have a voice, and I'm not saying that corporations shouldn't transform, but that's all part of the growth process. And I know I'm only talking about a gallon of gasoline, but it shows up in so many different ways in so many different places. And so, it really is time for us to move to that proactive stance and get that bigger idea, which allows us to recognize that does not affect the transformation to the degree we think it is. That is not the cause behind this. What that is the effect of what's happening. Mm-hmm. And where we need to do the transformational work is at the causation level, the causative level. And that causative level is this sense of separation, this sense of I'm right, you're wrong, this sense of national boundaries, this sense of demonization, this sense of withholding and withdrawing, this sense of violence is an answer. And it's not just violence against human beings. So this transformation has huge impact on what goes on in the world in so many different things. It's like a flower. If you go outside and you take the daisy out in your yard and you pull 3 of the 5 petals off of it, it's going to hurt it. And each one of those areas is going to be affected. And so it's a requirement that we begin to look at it from a whole, not
Yes.
from the small.
Yes.
And when we look at it from the whole, not the small, when we see it as the intelligence of life sees it, then it opens the door for the transformation to take place and to go smoothly and easily. When we look at it from the small point of view, from the particular, what happens is we become obsessed with the smallness and with the particulars in it. Dr. Ernest Holmes, who wrote The Science of Mind, said that we look at life as though through a keyhole. And he was recommending that we begin to look at life with the door open rather than with the keyhole. Or better yet, no door at all. And just look at it as the wholeness of it. And so here we are. So prayers are required, and an action is required. And that action doesn't have to be pick up a gun, although for some it does. That action might be recognize that freedom and evolution has a cost. And the cost is we have to give up what we used to think was right in order to have something greater and something bigger that may be more right. Yes. And that's really, that's the struggle that I have sometimes, because I look at the small things. I look at the children in Ukraine and I think how horrible and horrific that is. And I speak up about it. And I also realize that goodness will be the answer, one way or the other.
And the goodness that we're seeing emerge all over, like the borders opening up and welcoming people in, it's heartwarming and it gives hope. And I think you pointing out that when something affects us and we think it affects us in a negative way, like gas prices going up, don't look at that from a keyhole perspective. Open your mind, open your heart. Be grateful that there's something we can do. If that's like a small sacrifice when people are walking on the road with children to a border to be safe, or staying back to protect their freedom and to protect their homeland. Like that's, what they call a champagne problem. But what we can do is, step forward and be proud that we can at least do that. If we feel like we can't do much else, at least we can do that and not complain about it. And we can reach out to someone that may not be able to afford that gas and say, do you need support for getting to work these days because the gas prices are up? It's like we can reach out that hand and do what we can to make things better everywhere, person to person, moment by moment. Thank you for this time. Thank you for this conversation. For everyone that's with us here, for everyone around the globe, we are together in consciousness, and our consciousness has an impact. And as Kenn said, breathe in to this divine intelligence. There is a great intelligence here.
Great is happening. Love has taken all that it won't let go of us now.
Something here is calling us forward, upward motion with drops in one ocean. Roll on.
Will you rise up with me today? Lift up your voice and boldly say, we are the